If you're not already subscribed to this YouTube channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button now, along with the bell icon so you can be notified whenever a new video is posted. And if you're already subscribed, check and make sure that YouTube hasn't unsubscribed you. And of course, be sure to give the video a like as well as share it on your social media. The white supremacists hate that. And now, the Sunday address. Alright, let's talk about the debate. Sure, it may be past tense, but it also gave us a side-by-side comparison about why it is that we're sitting out the election because there isn't anyone to vote for. What can we say about it? It was a basic presidential debate. Neither one of the candidates said anything that was one iota different than what we thought they were going to say, but the left corner of the white media had to make up for Biden's humiliating defeat. After all, they got to make the presidential race out to be a horse race, whether it is or not, so no matter what, they were going to claim that Kamala Harris shellacked the orange man, because what else could they say? They need a quote-unquote game changer, badly. If they said that Kamala had merely held her own, that would be the same as saying she's cold toast, and that ain't good enough. And they certainly couldn't say that she didn't score any knockout blows. Harris has been avoiding the cameras from day one, and the left corner of the white media has been letting her. Even her CNN interview saw her being tripped up.
When you were in Congress, you supported the Green New Deal. And in 2019, you said, quote, "There is no question I'm in favor of banning fracking." Fracking, as you know, is a pretty big issue, particularly in your must-win state of Pennsylvania.
Sure.
Do you still want to ban fracking?
No, and I made that clear on the debate stage in 2020, that I would not ban fracking. As vice president, I did not ban fracking. As president, I will not ban fracking.
So even with the friendliest of left-of-center white media outlets, Kamala Harris still wasn't smart enough to keep all her lies straight. Even at this late date, she's still the county clerk's office level functionary she was back when she was carrying low-down Willie Brown's bag. Of course, the orange man doesn't have this vulnerability, mainly because Trump doesn't have to give good interviews. He's already decided that he's going to throw his base red meat. He's going to tell them that he's going to do the things that they claim they want him to do, even if a lot of them already know going in he didn't do much the first time around and probably won't do much the second time. But the point is, he's speaking to their interest. He's saying what it is that they want him to do. Kamala Harris won't even do that much. So because the white media knows presidential races are good for business, they're going to hype Harris because to do otherwise would be to claim that the election's already over, and if it is, then why should anyone tune in to the white media's vapid coverage or read their inane articles, which offer no insights at all? They know the game they're playing, and they know who they're playing. You. That is, if you let them. So predictably, the white media narrative coming out of the debate is that Kamala absolutely destroyed Trump. It was worse than Kennedy versus Nixon. It was worse than Biden's implosion just a few months earlier. Of course it wasn't, and the viewers can see that, and even the cheerleaders for Kamala can see that too. They're hyping Kamala because she's in trouble. Her entire strategy has been to hide from the cameras, do no interviews, stick to campaign rallies and other safe spaces, and see if she can fly under the radar at least until Election Day. This has been all about avoiding having to explain herself or face tough questions for the next 45 days. As she and her handlers see it, that's the goal. Just keep her from putting her foot in her mouth for the next 45 days. 6 weeks. If they can just stall for time for 6 weeks, then she's got a chance. She was really counting on taking the lead from Trump after the convention, but as I told you, her anticipated post-convention bump didn't materialize, and the white media's own bias has come back to bite them. Ever since she was announced as a candidate, they've pushed the narrative that Kamala Harris has been some kind of game changer. Record-breaking fundraising, they say, which, as I told you in an earlier briefing, is the exact same thing they said about Hillary Clinton in 2016. That she was breaking all previous campaign fundraising records and had raised far more than Trump in donations, along with her being ahead of Trump in all the polls. They're just cutting and pasting the same headlines from 8 years ago. This is not some phenomenon taking place, it's just the same old election cycle narrative, only this time they're putting some extras on it. Kamala's been electrifying the crowds, they say. Her poll numbers have been skyrocketing, they say. Swing state voters are falling in love with her, they say. And her numbers have only been going up, up, up. They've been saying this for 2 months now, and yet, even though she, according to friendly white media outlets, only needs 1 or 2 percentage points to pass Trump, she still hasn't been able to yet, even after the convention, even after allegedly mopping the floor with Trump. Her poll numbers have remained stagnant for weeks now. It's been 2 whole months since Biden dropped out, but even with all the lavish coverage Kamala's been given, Trump is still ahead of her in the polls. How can this be if her numbers have only been going up for weeks? How can this be if all she needs is a couple of percentage points to pass Trump, and yet no matter how much we hear that she's continuing to rise, she's still behind Trump months later? Her post-convention bump has been more sizzle than steak. Even her biggest cheerleader, the New York Times, has been forced to admit that her momentum has stalled out. Now, this headline was just a couple of days before the debate, only a couple weeks after the Democratic convention, when Kamala's numbers should have spiked and her lead over Trump should have fully solidified. Instead, we see her biggest fans forced to admit her momentum has stalled. So all the chatter about her numbers keep rising is just hype. Because in politics, as in the rest of life, if you're not growing, you're shrinking. And that being the case, one has to wonder, with her momentum having stalled out, how long until those numbers begin to slide to the point that even the white media has to admit it. They just want you to think that her numbers are only going up. They're trying to get something going, and it's not working. She needs to get at least 5 to 6 points ahead of Trump merely to be outside the margin of error, but the numbers aren't moving. Candidate Kamala isn't gaining steam, as her own media outlets have put it, and that's why they've been desperately trying to make you think she won the debate. Now, as I've told you, it's impossible to win an election at a presidential debate, though it is possible to lose an election at the debate. When Biden crashed and burned live on air, he lost the election then and there. The same white media who have been ignoring his clear cognitive decline were now forced to admit to it. Voters could see this guy could barely talk. And when he tried to, it came out complete gibberish. He's sunk his support with Democrat voters. People who previously said they could support him were suddenly saying something was wrong with him and he wouldn't last 4 more years. Compare that to Trump versus Harris. Did Trump do anything that would make people say, he's lost my vote, he can't possibly be president? No. And with an election in which he holds the lead, that's bad news for Kamala. The debate hasn't moved the needle for her. Whatever huge post-debate bump the white left media was clearly hoping for didn't happen. That's why I showed you all those headlines from those very same people who were saying Kamala wiped the floor with Trump, but that it probably doesn't even matter. That's what they're saying. Oh, she beat the guy 5 ways from Sunday, but it probably doesn't matter. They spun the debate harder than a Category 5 hurricane, and it still didn't help. That's why her camp was demanding a second debate immediately after the first. They had a controlled environment with ABC where they knew the moderator wouldn't put her on the spot, wouldn't ask any tough questions, and they could control how long Trump could speak. And of course, they would be fact-checking him the entire night, because Kamala's not sharp enough to score points on Trump on her own, so the moderators would have to do it for her. The entire point of the debate was to manufacture headlines saying that Kamala crushed Trump. He was caught in a gotcha over and over again, except Kamala never got him at all. The entire point of the debate, it seems, was to fabricate some headlines saying that she crushed Trump, and that all you people who were thinking that you weren't going to be voting for her, well, you might as well have because she's winning. And speaking of fabricated headlines, the headlines that came out immediately after the debate said that Kamala Harris and her team wanted a second debate, but that Trump is refusing. But something must have happened the day after. I think it was the realization that Kamala didn't get that post-debate bump that they were hoping for, because the headlines suddenly changed from Kamala Harris' team wants a second debate to Trump says he won't debate Kamala again. And you can tell they're all coordinated on this because they're all using the exact same wording in their headlines. Now, by wording it like that, Trump says he won't debate Kamala again, it's meant to make it sound like Trump is declaring this on his own, when in reality he was giving a response to Kamala's demand that he debate her again. Her team were the ones who demanded a second debate. This is an admission that whatever bump Kamala and her allies were looking for didn't happen. So when she demanded a rematch and Trump said no, they're trying to bait him into it. But they word their headline the way that they do because most people don't read past the headlines. Hard to believe among an intelligent group like this. But it's true. Most people have no confidence in the white media, so little trust, and truth be told, so little interest, that they skim headlines, and that's it. So using misleading wording in their headlines is crucial to shaping public opinion. But Trump has turned things on its ear by saying that he won't debate Kamala again. He's declaring victory. He knows the debate didn't boost Kamala's numbers at all, that her momentum stalled out. She'll go the way of Sarah Palin and wither on the vine if she can't make something happen. He has the lead, and time is running out for her to gain some major points. See, Trump has done this before with Ron DeSantis. Moron was so desperate to boost his own failing presidential campaign and get some face time with Trump, but Trump knew that debating DeSantis would only benefit DeSantis. So he declared that he wouldn't participate in any of the Republican debates, and indeed he didn't. Without Trump there, people didn't care to see DeSantis' stupid ranting about critical race theory and DEI. The white media hated that because their power is based on their ability to conjure magic. They write headlines about you, and that's supposed to become reality through the power of public gullibility. They can tell the public to love you or hate you based solely on their own headlines and repeating that talking point over and over again until people buy it. That's how the white media makes something out of nothing. But also, they need to validate that the road to the White House leads through the white media. Trump showed them that they can give all the TV time they want to these also-rans, but that he's the one people are tuning in to actually see, and without him there it won't matter. Love Trump or hate him, the orange man accurately understood that massive TV coverage alone for DeSantis wouldn't translate into massive votes. And he was right. And of course, DeSantis flamed out, and now Trump is running the same play against Kamala Harris, starving her for oxygen too. Whether you like Trump or not, and I admittedly fall into the don't like the orange man category, looking at this from a purely objective standpoint, you have to admit that after almost a decade in politics, we now have enough data points and examples of Trump under fire to know how he performs when he's under attack from multiple opponents. When he first disrupted the GOP in 2015, he was up against the never-Trumpers on the white right, including Fox News. Every GOP debate he went into, the moderators made no secret of their disdain for him. It was clear to everyone their job was to take him down. Most of the questions at those Republican primary debates were aimed at Trump. Everybody else is basically being ignored. All of it was meant to damage him politically. That was the first example of a media organization who knew their chosen candidates couldn't beat Trump, so they tried to defeat Trump from the moderator's bench. The main problem with that strategy is that the public can tell when the media is piling on someone or singling them out, even if it's someone they don't like. The result is the public sympathizes with the individual being piled on because it's obvious they're being attacked by a group. This is a big part of why Fox's attacks on Trump at the debates backfired, even with Republican voters who weren't part of MAGA world. Everyone remembers the dust-up between Trump and Megyn Kelly, who these days is looking more like a cadaver. So Trump knows what it means to be in a debate where everyone on stage and off stage are attacking him. He handles pressure very well. Like him or hate him, you have to acknowledge he's not afraid to go into enemy territory. When he was debating Kamala, he was also having to debate the moderators too. They were trying to fluster him, anger him, get him to lose his cool, but it didn't work. Now, has Kamala ever done a debate on Fox? Has she done a debate on any platform other than a friendly one? She did one debate against Tulsi Gabbard and got crushed, and that was on a friendly platform. We've never seen candidate Kamala under pressure. All we've seen is her coddled, protected, and catered to. The one time she was in a debate and got taken to task, it went very badly for her. That's why ABC's so-called moderator spent so much time fact-checking Trump. Kamala's too incompetent to score any points on Trump on her own, so ABC had to do it themselves. In fact, when you look at the white media's coverage of the debate, you notice that all the alleged victories that Kamala had that night were actually when Trump was being fact-checked. Go back and watch the debate, if you dare, or read it for yourselves. The big moments that the white media claims were defeats for Trump was when the moderators challenged him on something. Kamala didn't actually do anything, the moderators did. It's only now, after the debate, that some, not many leftist white media personalities are pointing out that during Kamala's CNN interview, Dana Bash tripped her up when she asked why Kamala had changed her position on fracking. Kamala lied and claimed that she hadn't, and Bash let her get away with it. But in reality, trying to run from her prior position, Kamala stuttered and stammered her way into a nearly incoherent denial of reality. That's why she doesn't do any interviews, and it's hurting her. Even the New York Times had to admit it. Voters are saying they don't feel like they know anything about Kamala, even at this late date. She's been in the public eye for several years, and she's been vice president for 4, and yet you still got those voters saying they don't feel like they know anything about her. Yet that's the price of not doing interviews. It means that she has no real media presence. And those rallies are no substitute for that. All she's doing is preaching to the choir. Clearly, Kamala's handlers and the left corner of the white media understand that neither the convention nor the debate has made Kamala the frontrunner, and her momentum stalled. The only way to overcome this is to get her in front of the cameras doing as many interviews as possible. But they can't afford to do that because she comes apart under the lightest of questioning. Kamala Harris doesn't interview well. She didn't lay a glove on Trump during the debate. There were no memorable zingers, no killer debate moments where she tripped him up or forced him to make some damning admission. She didn't beat him. But the left corner of the white media's mission has been to convince as many people as possible that she did, merely by saying it over and over again. And the more they work to convince the public without having any real proof of what a great performance they claim she'd had, the more they sound like they're straight coping. The public isn't sold on her, and there's no more opportunities for a Kamala bump in the polls at this date. There's no more conventions between now and the election. No more debates either, thanks to Trump. Kamala needs another chance to try to get a bump, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen. So what is there to keep her numbers from beginning to slide south? Now, Trump and his goons have never been able to pull an October surprise. Trump tried it when he attempted to coerce the Ukrainians into making a false announcement that they were going to investigate Hunter Biden's business dealings over there, but the only thing Trump got out of that stunt was impeached. Nonetheless, if there is a chance that someone over in the Trump camp is ready to try some sort of October surprise, something that would force Kamala to get in front of the cameras, that would do more than anything to damage her. Kamala hasn't established herself as some Oval Office-ready candidate. The left corner of the white media has been furiously trying to manufacture that misimpression through their orgy of flattering headlines. But since she only sticks to campaign rallies and doesn't really get in front of the voters, certainly not anyone who's even remotely going to take issue with her, she's hurting her ability to talk to and connect with those center and right-of-center voters. That's why Trump's banging the drum about illegal aliens eating people's dogs and what's going on in Ohio, because Kamala isn't going to talk to those people. She hopes the ABCs and CNNs can make the case for her with those voters out there, except they can't. And they also hope that black people will begin to get afraid of the orange man being back in office, so the bootlicks and shills have been crawling out of the woodwork after 3 years of straight hiding. They want us to be afraid, or to be angry, to be emotional. When people are emotional, they act impulsively. They can be more easily led around by the nose. But now you have black people who are removing all sentiment from the equation and looking at these elections as a straightforward business transaction. What are we going to get? For the first time in generations, black voters are actually attaching demands to our vote. And we're seeing that these Democrats are doing everything they can to tell us what they won't do for us. But they've been bending over backwards to do things for everybody else. So they can bring out Trump's past racism and his current bigoted nonsense, and those are valid points. Fair enough. I certainly won't be voting for Trump because he's not offering me anything. But I won't be voting for Kamala Harris either, for the exact same reason. She's not offering me anything either. My vote is valuable, and like anything of value, it must be purchased. The hell would we look like giving Kamala the White House for free, especially after she spent decades using every political office she's ever held to attack the black community? You think when she becomes president that's going to change? What's her stance on reparations today? What's her stance on an anti-black hate crime bill? What's her stance on punishing the police? Has she said anything about what she's going to do for black people on any issue at all? In last Thursday's briefing, I told you about how the National Association of Black Journalists pretended to question Kamala about reparations. They asked her if she would use her ability as president to issue an executive order to commission a study on reparations, just something as empty and meaningless as a study. Kamala Harris said no Congress should handle something like that. So she's gone from, I'm not going to do something that's only going to benefit black people, to, I won't even discuss anything that benefits black people. 4 years ago, Kamala Harris stood right beside Joe Biden, and they both offered up a slate of empty promises, like the so-called Lift Every Voice plan, whatever the heck that was supposed to mean, and the White House-level Police Accountability Commission, the George Floyd Policing Act, even things like the John Lewis Voting Act. Even if you are some empty-headed Negro who actually believe Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's lies, the question still stands, what have they actually done? They made a ton of promises and fulfilled absolutely none of them. Oh, but they did put a black woman on the Supreme Court and made another ambassador to the UN. And how much good has that done us? Tokenism. That's all they're offering. The Democrats appoint these tools who are going to do their bidding, and then they claim they did it for us, even though we've gotten nothing out of the presence of Ketanji Brown on the Supreme Court or that Greenfield woman at the UN. Giving 2 black women a couple of civil service jobs doesn't change our condition as a group. They're both there to be black faces serving white interests, which is exactly what they've done. So that's what I think about the debate. Just a big nothing burger, a joint press conference by a couple of blowhards talking tough about what they're going to do for everybody else. This election needs to be about the real issues, starting with cash reparations and an anti-black hate crime law. Now, if there are other candidates out there who allegedly are amenable to these long overdue policies, then they need to do something that Kamala and Trump and the two major parties would never do. Reach out to the black grassroots. As long as they don't, then they're not alternatives at all. They're just continuing the process of keeping the people who are demanding real change at arm's length. If it's too much trouble for you to talk to us, then it's too much trouble for us to vote for you. That's the rule. For everyone, that's the standard. Everybody wants to stand with these pathetic sock puppets created by the same white dark money donors who made the political process a sham to begin with. You have to be connected to the establishment power brokers for even these so-called independents to talk to you. Then so be it. But as I've been saying for years and years now, it is not the voters' job to chase the candidates. It's the candidates' job to chase the voters and make the case. If you decided that you don't want to do that, then what you're really saying is you want for black voters to basically enhance and raise your prestige and your profile. And that only benefits you. Well, if there's one thing we learned about Kamala, it's that we're through being held at arm's length, treated like a dirty secret, and otherwise regarded as people that it's just too much trouble to be seen with us or even talking to us. That's how Kamala Harris wound up in the position that she's in. And there's no debate about that. Good evening, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Edward, Ronald Waits, Rowlett Churchwell, Connie Beasley, and James Porter. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.